then your agenda just went off. So
I
let's
know, I'm
see.
gonna put it back.
What am I hoping to gain? We are, I think before I became a teacher, we had a bit of a gifted and talented program here with Wendy Murky many years ago. And then it just kind of, when the funds dried up, the program dried up. And I did my master's when I became a teacher. I went for my master's and did it in gifted. I did my thesis on gifted and talented programs. And I've always had really an interest in it, in helping these kids, because we do have a pretty good population of them here. And so when it started, we started talking about it again about 2-3 years ago. I was able to go to a meeting at the OAISD with our superintendent, and so he started to get the wheels turning again for us to at least start in a small way. We had a parent forum last year, or actually the year before, and then last year they decided to try a clustering model, and so they gave me 6 of the 4th grade students in my class for math, and so I did start to dabble in it, but of course it was really hard with, remote, and I'm in class remote, and then in class, because it's a clustering model, so I have some low ones as well and some medium kids. So I'm doing 4th grade math, 5th grade math standards, both home and in class. And so time-wise, it's been almost impossible, but we've done a couple of project-based assignments, and the kids just love them. So that's why I'm here, to learn more and to do more.
Wonderful. And Alix, I don't know if you can talk or if you can.
I'm putting mine in the chat.
Perfect. Just let me know when you're done introducing yourself, because when I'm sharing screen, I can't see the chat.
I put it in there. It's there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for joining us. And Stacey. Are you chatting, Stacey, or are you gonna say it live?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Sorry, I was talking to nothing.
Yeah,
So I'm just a mom. I've got a couple of gifted kids. We've been doing a lot of testing with the PSAT. We've done some of the gifted programs at MSU. I've come to a couple of your events that you've had with some of the different authors that have put out some amazing books on gifted and talented kids. And so I'm just always trying to learn. I am homeschooling my kids. One is doing an online course. She's did it before all the COVID stuff hit, but she loves it because she can do her schooling at her level.
Yeah.
And that has been a huge benefit. And we've just been learning a ton about like the social emotional side of having highly gifted kids. And so I'm always just trying to learn. When I was doing homeschooling, I did a lot of literature-based learning, and I saw that this was a little bit of a swing on that with project-based learning. So I just wanted to learn more about that to see if I could apply it to what I'm doing on the home front for my kids.
Wonderful. And that is such a valid point that you made up. So when you're doing online school, it actually makes it easier to be able to differentiate in a way that you can tier the activities that they're doing, and they can get to other websites if you want, that student or that student, those group of 4 to, use a different level or different website or something like that for activities, they can do that. So that was a valid point that you brought up. I'm glad you said that. So I guess I'm next. So I'm Kelley Senkowski, and I am not recording, Jan. So my apologies when you did yours. I hadn't hit record yet, so I'm going to kind of share you too. So Jan and I, and Jan did a wonderful introduction, by the way. Jan and I are the co-coordinators for the Ottawa Area ISD and been a part of the Michigan Association for Gifted Students, or Children now it is, for 20 years. And I was a leader, or president, if you will, twice for that organization. And I've done professional development training around Michigan for 15 years. My full-time hat, I actually work at Ferris for the e-learning department. So that's where the online learning I'm big into, but it works if done correctly. But the other thing is I have 5 kids. I went through the gifted, all that stuff with them, and Twice Exceptional and all those good things. So yeah, that's kind of Jan and I. So sorry, Jan, I had to loop you into that intro for the recording. But yeah, so I would love, Jan, since we don't have as many participants live, because we're going to have them watching later, could you talk about those resources that you mentioned and just put them in the chat, the name of them, so people can Google them, but tell them about them? Those are fabulous project-based and team resources, and I don't want to lose that. I'll unshare this so you guys can see her.
Yeah, I was telling Terry about the Interact series. Like, I used that a lot up at White House schools when I was teaching up there, teaching the gifted program. One of them was like Poetry 1, 2, 3, and it's really set up nicely with all the goals and then how to score points and all the wonderful ideas on projects. And you come out with a wonderful poetry journal. Everybody gets a journal to take home of their poetry, which is a really neat thing. And they've got this Interact company has tons of math and science projects and social studies and history, so all different subjects. And there's one on Spanish too. And so anyway, they have a wide array. And then I was telling Terry, there's another one called CML, Continental Math League. And I always use that with my math kids. It's really good for encouraging teamwork, like maybe 2 or possibly 3 students working together, solving problems that are multi-step problems, not just a one-step answer. So you have to go through all these different steps to get it. It's not easy. So I would highly recommend those, and I'll think of some others too.
That's perfect. So I'm going to type these in the chat unless you want to. It's Interact.
Oh yeah. Interact, and it's called Learning Through Involvement.
Oh, Interact is the company.
Yeah.
Okay, Learning Through Involvement. Okay.
And then the other one is Continental Math League, CML.
That way people can Google it at least and not lose it as a resource.
Right.
And I will try to find the links to these before the end. Continental Math League, okay. Perfect, okay. Those are excellent. And I do actually have one of Jacque Melin's books too that she has. I need to ask when she gets on if they're still printing it. So I don't really want to link to it if you can't get it anyways. But I know she has a new book. Her and Kelley have a brand new book that just hit the presses that they'll be talking about as well. So I just want to kind of transition us into some announcements. And that kind of brings us to the conference. So we have our conference that is scheduled for April 22nd. I just had to verify that for a while before I said that out loud. So April 22nd, and that is our gifted conference, and we have to do it online again. Usually we do this in person. I'm going to actually put that in the date for you in the link. So we have Jacque and Kelley coming today to kind of give us a teaser because they're going to keynote for us along with breakout speakers on their brand new book. So I've asked them to kind of tell us a lot about in general, the project-based things, but then save the big pow of their book for keynoting at our conference. So I'm just putting the date in here. It's going to be on Zoom again because people can't do the face-to-face yet. So hopefully by fall, we'll be able to see people face-to-face. But, you know, who knows? We'll just keep moving along as we have to. So it is nice, though, this way that I can have people then watch the recordings later. That has actually been a benefit to having it in Zoom, because otherwise when you miss it, it's gone. But mark your calendars for that April 22nd. It is going to be an all-day thing. So we do know that not everyone can go all day, but you are still welcome to pop in. We're trying to work out, and we don't have this finalized in any way, but we are asking that we can include their book with registration, and we're just seeing if there's a way to work it out with OAISD. So I can't promise that, but we're trying, and got to figure out how to get that to everybody. So we're trying to do that. So and maybe it'll be a early register bonus or something for people if we get a set amount, but you can kind of keep your eye on that. But that's coming April 22nd. It'll be a full day of breakouts in all gifted topics. We're filling right now, Jan and I are filling out the last breakouts on this. So I'm wondering, is there a topic that would help you guys that we can fill in our last breakouts instead of us guessing what might be helpful to you? Is there something, whether it's the social emotional, the twice exceptional, the academic side, and lessons, any of that stuff that would be helpful to you to learn about in April?
There's a new book that's out, and it's called Equity in Gifted Education by, I think it's April Hill. And that might be a good thing to discuss.
Well, there's a lot. Yeah, like the Acceleration Institute has a lot of the research, and yeah, I like that whole topic is a conference in itself. So maybe we can touch on that. Is there anything, Alix or Stacey or Terry, that would be helpful to you?
It's kind of one of those things that you don't know what you don't know.
Yes, I get it. Understandable. How about from a parent standpoint? Is there anything that would be helpful to you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think what we've been working on a lot now is the social emotional side, because I feel like now we've kind of got my daughters at places where they're being challenged academically, where when we had them in the public school, that was always a big challenge. And I really struggled with, how do I work with the public school to make the importance of giftedness as a focus equal to the lower level development. And I really struggled with that to a point where I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. So I don't know if that would be helpful for anybody, just like, how do you work with like the public schools for them to put an emphasis on the gifted?
That is a great one. And it's something that Jan and I have been fighting for 20 years in Michigan, and how to get the schools to focus on this and to train on, like you say, it's not just the academic, although that's a huge piece, because if you have the academic supports, that actually makes the social emotional part better for the students. But it is both for these students. They are wired differently, completely differently. So it is a huge one. So I could actually probably even present on the social emotional and tie in that executive functioning if we can't find somebody else. I've done those presentations. So that's actually helpful to know. Right. And as far as back to the training piece and what you had just said to us, the question and the problem in the schools of understanding it. There's a couple things that are kind of in the pipeline. Jan and I are going to continue, pick it back up late spring when the weather breaks, as working with the MDE again and continuing to knock on that door. We were able
Also,
to get some things.
sorry to interrupt, but what about MTSS? That's major.
Yeah, MTSS as well. And
I
so
mean,
we are
do
pursuing
they
that
know
with the
what MTSS means? Do the parents know what MTSS means?
So if you don't know what MTSS is, it is the benchmark, if you will, that the different school districts need to, they don't need to, that they can try to adhere to be, the best school, considered one of the best schools in Michigan. Like that is their benchmark that they want to try to attain to, that they kind of have to answer to of if they're not doing certain components in that at the state level. So that's a district and ISD benchmark, like a measure that they try to have their schools be able to work towards that. And so we do now have gifted needs included in that
And wording,
that wasn't before
right?
for years. So that is one thing that's happening. The other thing is there is an online professional development in process currently being created that it's not a college, it's not like a degree, but it's something that if a school wants to have their teachers learn something about these gifted students, it's a good start for them. And maybe they'll get an interest to go further with that and, official degrees, hopefully. But so there are some things in place, but we definitely need more for sure. So it's something we can talk about.
Kelley, 2 people just got admitted. I admitted them. So it would be Kelley, Margot, and Stacey was in the waiting room. So I admitted them. Is that all right?
Perfect. Hi, Kelley and Jacque. Just letting you know that we can see you and we appreciate you. So we were just doing some introductions, a little bit around the room kind of thing, and talking about some updates. So Jan is now going to tell us what the Michigan Association for Gifted Children updates are.
All right, thank you. Yes, so we had a meeting just last week, and so the scholarship applications are available for any summer program. So any student can apply for a scholarship, and the applications are due by March 1st to Kelley Schultz. And do you have Kelley's email there, Kelley?
I can type it in there.
Yeah, it's Kelley at Dykstra House.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, so that would be a possibility. Anybody that needs help to go to financial help to go to a summer opportunity, that would be a good thing to apply for by March 1st. And then the other thing is that Lorena, part of the education committee, is compiling a list of all the Michigan gifted programs. So that would be a good thing for Terry and other people to know, what other programs are available and which other teachers are teaching it, so that we can network. That is the main goal for that survey. And so they're getting that out in the next month. And then also the new president of the NAGC, which is the National Association for Gifted Children, is Lori Kirsch, Kirsch, and she is from Michigan. She lives in, her address is Harbor Springs, but she was teaching down in Florida. So anyway, we do have a connection now to a better connection to the National Association for Gifted Children. So that is that's a few of the highlights of the meeting.
Can you talk a little bit about who Lori Kirsch is? Because that's like 15 minutes from my house.
All right. I just heard about her at the meeting, and she was a teacher. She used to live in Michigan, and she moved down to Florida, but now her address is Harbor Springs. And like I said, she's supposed to be the new president of NAGC. So that's all I know. I'm sorry, but if you look it up, Google it, or else we could contact the NAGC and ask them.
Okay.
More about her background. Sorry, I wish I knew more.
That's great though. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sure it's probably on their website if she's the incoming or current president that we could find out.
Right.
But it's exciting that we have Michigan represented. Yay. Usually it's not Michigan who runs the national organization, so that's nice to see. I also put in the chat the website for MAGC because we keep referring to two different ones. MAGC is the Michigan state level organization, and NAGC is the national association that Jan was just talking about with the new president. And they're quite a large organization and tons of resources. So go ahead and you can also look up NAGC if you're not familiar with that. There's so many fabulous resources on there, whether you're an educator or whether you're a parent, tons. They have things on the laws that are out there right now and legislation and all that stuff. So very good sources to find things on. Any other updates, Jan, that we should share?
Well, and you're working at Ferris on a curriculum, right?
Yes, I'm not, I am, I mean, it's not part of Ferris's curriculum. They have a, maybe it could be someday, but they have a Ferris portal that the community can have courses on. That I'm just designing the professional development courses just for basics if you don't know anything about gifted kind of thing. And that's what I was referring to, that I'm hoping if someone does something like that, or it's a teacher could get interested in gifted and want to go further with their education in this area.
So it's basically a certificate. It's like a certificate with how many hours is required for the certificate.
It's going to be, it's 3 courses, like 3, it would be a comparable of 12 credit hours if you look at it like that. But it's really an intro to everything, so that it's kind of the how and the why, and hopefully they'll want to learn some more. But it's a good baseline if someone has never heard of like why gifted and everyone's gifted until, you know, it kind of helps with those kinds of mindsets to help them understand that these are different characteristics, their brains work differently, all that good stuff. So really a baseline introduction to it, so that they'll hopefully want to take that further and understand why maybe they need to look at some more resources to teach students, or, you know, give their students teachers resources, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's all the updates I have. And wow, we're rated around 1:30. Yes, perfect. Glad we talked long enough, Jan. And so I would love to now turn this over to Kelley, Margot, and Jacque Melin, who are either retired in part of or somewhere in the differentiation education degrees that they have over at GVSU. And just they are authors and just a fabulous, a phenomenal resource. So I'm hoping you guys really use them for your questions when they're done presenting, because they can give you instantaneous suggestions, which are fabulous. I will let you guys introduce yourself further if you want to talk more about your background or things, but I'm big fans of both of you, so I'll let you guys take it from there.
Well, thanks, Kelley. We're big fans of y'all too. So, I just dropped the link to the Google Slides in the chat. So if anybody has any trouble with that, please let me know. But that's the slides that I'm going to go to right now.
Did you want to share screen? I made you a co-host, or I can share it, or what was your?
Right now,
You got it. Perfect. Awesome.
Oh, good.
So this is the one thing, you know, I teach online. I teach at the graduate school at GVSU, and I've taught online forever. But now I feel like one of the great things that COVID has done for me personally is other people are teaching online. So now other people know, you know.
I so agree with you.
Okay, so
now they understand.
Yeah, and I feel like I have, you know, help and camaraderie in that effort. So we are going to really talk to you about project-based learning and gifted students. So let me tell you real quick, I have my PhD in gifted education. Jacque and I, although we're both professors at GVSU, we also have, you know, a history and background in gifted. Jacque ran a gifted program at a school district here in Michigan and has been a fierce advocate for gifted here in Michigan. And I have this unique experience of having run a gifted program in Texas and getting a PhD, where I have all these friends that also got their PhD that are now doing gifted programs all over the country. So we meet and we talk about, one of them's in Washington State and one of them's in New York. And we have these conversations about gifted, what it looks like, where it should be going, what commonalities there are. And so it really is, it is interesting. Michigan doesn't have funding, which is super sad. So in Texas, the state funds and actually requires districts to have 5% of their total population identified as gifted and talented. So every public school district has a gifted program. And so there's this fierce knowledge to know and learn how to make your district have the best gifted program. So when parents are shopping around for somewhere to live, they are looking at gifted programs. So I have this background in that. And really our main problem in Texas was identification. So we worked a lot on how do you identify the right gifted students? How do you make sure you have equity in identification practices? So I was doing a lot of work with identification. And then when I got here to Michigan, I was like, oh my gosh, like they aren't even identifying them in most school districts. So honestly, it took me aback and it took me a minute. Jacque helped me understand the history and also what's happening here. And I want to tell y'all, one of the things that I see is it's real inequitable, right? So you have some school districts that are still doing gifted programs and gifted things, and some that aren't doing anything. So I felt compelled to step back and think about what's best for the kids in Michigan. And so Jacque and I have done a lot of work getting trained and learning as much as we can about project-based learning. We both believe this is the answer. I actually believe this is the answer everywhere. And I've had some pretty cool conversations lately. I was talking to a friend of mine who he runs a gifted program in New York. And he told me that he agrees that project-based learning could really be the solution there too. So we know that Ottawa ISD does things with PBL already. And so we know that you probably are coming to this conversation with some knowledge, and that's actually really exciting. Jacque and I have been through the PBL Works training like 3 times. We've maxed out every training they have. And so we actually go with their trainer of trainers to trainings now. So I really feel like we have been well trained. And even at that level, we still know that there's room to grow and things to learn and get better at. So so just know that we know you probably know something. Stacey, have you been trained in project-based learning?
I have not been, but I have done a lot of reading, and that's actually what caught my eye, because I had not heard about project-based learning. And so that sounded really appealing and something new. And it sounds like on board with what I've experienced with my own kids, like what's been motivating for them to learn. And so, yeah, I'm really engaged and excited to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Okay, so I hope that we're going to have time for questions at the end. And if you have questions during our presentation, just use the raise your hand or throw up one of the little pictures and we'll hopefully see it and stop and answer. So we want to share with you what we think project-based learning can do for gifted students.
So yeah, welcome everyone. We're so happy you're here, and thank you for inviting us, Kelley and Jan. That's so sweet of you. And I just want to thank Kelley Margot, for keeping me involved in gifted and project-based learning and differentiation and all the things that I've truly believed in for a long time. I did retire from Rockford Public Schools and as gifted and talented coordinator, and I ended my career as an elementary principal there, and then went to Grand Valley and got to kind of start the program on differentiated instruction along with Dorothy Armstrong, who many of you probably remember from Grand Valley. And then Kelley was hired, and I just kind of adopted Kelley as my my daughter now, and she has really kept me involved, and I just am so appreciative. So just a quick agenda for today. Also, besides raising your hand or just stopping and telling us you have a question, you could put a question in the chat room as our parking lot. Our agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about why project-based learning is so important, because experiential learning is so important. And we'll do just a quick overview of the design elements in creating a project-based learning unit. And then we'll talk about those design elements and how each of them really address the needs of gifted. We were going to do a breakout session, but there aren't too many of us, so we'll put you in a Jamboard room and we'll mute ourselves during that time and have you do a little activity near the end called Rose, Bud, and Thorn. And then we'll do some whole group sharing of what you came up with. So that's where we're headed today. Any questions before we begin?
I did want to mention too that we talked about it earlier before you get on, that we have many people that would like this recording. So even though there's not a ton present, we're just keeping in mind it's a greater audience. So I like that we're going to be able to do something that they can actually see. That's wonderful.
Yeah, we got emails from people that are planning to watch the recording actually.
Oh, wonderful. If you want to forward them to me, we'll make sure everyone gets the same thing if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Later, keep going. Thank you.
So there's this idea of why we want to sell you PBL as a solution to gifted. And we think that that actually is because it is a type of experiential learning. I think STEM could do the same thing. I think any type of experiential learning is a solution. Remember, experiential learning is when students learn through their experiences, right? With the ultimate goal of transfer. So students can take this learning and reflection that they're doing and be able to transfer it to a new task. And I believe that the ultimate goal in education is transfer. Students should be able to use the information in a new context, in a new way, and that's real learning. So this Hockett study, if I've presented, and I know I have to some of you before, you have seen me throw this slide up because I think this is important to always look back at when we're thinking about gifted students. Hockett looked at all of the high quality gifted curriculums that exist. And she wanted to know, what do they have in common? What are the commonalities in high quality gifted programming? And she found these were the commonalities, that they were all conceptual within a discipline and integrative, right? We know that you can learn math best if you combine it with science. We know if you combine language arts and social studies, students are more successful. If you can make it transdisciplinary, that's good. And if you can help them learn within the discipline, that's good. We know that another commonality she found is this idea of students thinking in more abstract terms instead of just concrete things, and the depth and complexity that existed in these curriculums, the allowance of students to dig deeper. The students used the materials of experts and they had true to life outcomes. So it's more authentic. And the pacing and variety was flexible to student interests. So these were the things that she found high quality gifted curriculum across the world had in common. So to me, these are the hallmarks of what we're looking for. And I believe that what's best for gifted students is best for all students. And so that really helps me believe that experiential learning and project-based learning are good for all students. So gifted students are absolutely different, but I think this high quality curriculum is important. One of the things that's interesting, so Kelley S. mentioned that we do differentiation. So Jacque and I, that's what we do. I think one of the reasons why we love PBL is because of its ease ability to differentiate. It's this last bullet, right? The pacing and variety are flexible. It allows for, it almost demands differentiation. It's one of the reasons why I think it's great. So these are the 8 gold standard design elements of a project-based learning unit. This is how you know it's good. Now let me tell y'all. I did PBL very poorly in my teaching career. I taught for 17 years in the classroom. I did what I thought was PBL, and it was not so great at times. And I really think it's because I didn't truly understand these 8 elements. You have to, this comes from PBL Works. I know that this is these are the same design elements that OAISD uses. And it's really because they're the best. This is the best way to know you're doing the right thing and that you have a high quality unit. So we're going to go through these and talk about each one as they relate to gifted. So here we go. First of all, though, you have to know one of the most common mistakes with project-based learning is teachers will teach their unit. Like, let's say I'm learning about the Constitution. So I'll teach all about the Constitution and all the different things about government. And then at the end, I'm going to do this PBL unit as a dessert. That is not how PBL is supposed to be used. You should do all of the learning through the unit. And that's where I think sometimes the misconception that it takes longer, that it requires more time. It doesn't require more time because you're doing the learning during the unit. So in the center of this circle, you'll see key knowledge and understanding and key success skills, the learning goals, right? So what we need to know about all of these 8 elements revolve around the standards, the targets, the stuff you're trying to get students to learn, right? That stuff is in the middle. That stuff is still there. Students have to know certain things, and that is still there. As a matter of fact, everything in PBL revolves around those targets, those standards. And one thing that's really great, the reason why I think PBL works so well, is that there's no ceiling. Students can go as far and in depth and complex as they are interested in going or able or capable of going. And remember how I said it self-differentiates? They can also not go as deep, right? So that's what I mean. It just naturally differentiates. They also students have the opportunity to work with more advanced content because they can dig deeper, because it's more complex and abstract. It requires students to act and think like professionals, just like Hockett found in that study. We know that students, that gifted curriculum is best when when students are getting to act like professionals, and project-based learning demands that. They have to really own their learning, and there's a lot of autonomy in it. So that's just the middle. That's just the middle of that circle. So as we start to work around this circle and look at these 8 elements, remember that they all interact with those learning goals, those standards, that middle. That's the center of PBL. So if I can get to my, there we go. So the first standard we're going to look at is the first element is the challenging problem or question. So I think this is a good place to start. I think it's important that teachers really come up with a very open-ended, complex, ill-formed question that will drive their unit and will really let students take ownership of this project. So this gives gifted students an opportunity to interact with ethical issues, to think in complex ways, and to really, make a difference in their community if you use the right questions. So one thing I think is important to remember with PBL is it really should be, in a minute, we're going to look at authenticity, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this one. Like, it needs to be relevant. It needs to matter to your students. So you can start with somebody else's unit. I dropped the PBL Works website in the chat. There are a million wonderful units. PBL Works is a federally funded organization, so they provide for you units. Jacque and I have tons of units. Like, we can help you start with a unit, and nobody should start with nothing. You should start with something, but you should modify it based on your students, based on your world. For example, Jacque and I modified a unit this summer to be for COVID, for students that were learning remotely. So it mattered to students. We made it about COVID because that's relevant and matters. So you want to think about that, because it really needs to, in order to be challenging and in order to be sustained, it needs to be something that they're interested in. So the next element is sustained inquiry. So students stay interested in their unit because because you have this sustained inquiry. You allow them access to materials and learning, and you allow them to think really critically and deeply about their unit in question. So one trick, I think, when Jacque and I wrote a book and these teachers asked us, what was the number one thing we recommended for teachers of gifted? And we told them we think it's questioning, because I think it's cheap, it's easy, and I think it can really work. I know it can. There's a lot of research around it, right? Like all Kaplan's depth and complexity information, if you can ask the right questions, you're going to have your students thinking deeply about the material. So that's one way that you keep the inquiry going. You keep your PBL unit going by. So remember, this is multiple days, in some cases, multiple weeks. In some cases, it's not, but it's definitely multiple days. So as the students come back, you have to ask new questions and make sure that helps them stay on task, and it helps the project stay sustained.
And then I just want to add in this part also, then it's so important to teach our gifted students how to ask excellent questions too, so they can sustain the inquiry themselves. And they're very curious and probably want to ask good questions, but maybe they aren't experts on asking questions, or they don't really know the right questions to ask. So as part of a PBL unit, especially in the beginning when you're trying this with gifted kids, you really have to do some teaching on helping those kids ask good questions themselves, so they can really dig deeply into the topic that they're studying.
Yeah, so actually creativity is really important, but it's not often on our standardized tests, so we maybe don't look at it like we should. But we know from the creative researchers that creativity can be taught, that creative production matters. And part of the creative process that teachers can teach in the classroom, Sawyer and Baguetto say that the hardest step for students is actually forming questions. So that's a really good practice for students to be in. They should be forming questions, thinking of questions, and you can help them ask experts. I love to help them reach out and email somebody, a professor or an expert in that field, to ask their question. The project also needs to be authentic. I mentioned this a minute ago. So I actually believe this is the most important element. PBL Works doesn't believe there is an important element, but this is the one I think is the most important. If you want students to buy in and you want students to really be invested in your project, it needs to be authentic. It needs to be something they care about. It needs to matter. It needs to give back to the world and help them really feel like they're meaningfully working towards an outcome. It can be, I have seen little kids tackle a leaky water faucet in their school and prove how much water is being wasted, and be so empowered that they were making a difference in their school and with their area. So it doesn't have to be global, it can be local, it can be at the school level or at the classroom level, but it just needs to be something that matters to them, something authentic. And that's going to help them feel like they are making a difference and can positively impact their world.
So another one of the elements is giving students more voice and choice within the unit. And you know how gifted kids, I think, just really crave something interesting, something engaging, something with an appropriate challenge. And giving them more voice and choice brings all those things to the forefront. It is more interesting, it is more engaging, it is a more appropriate challenge when they have voice and choice. So I often think about all the complaints that I would get from parents when I was gifted and talented coordinator. And one of the biggest complaint was, my child is bored in class. And that was because they really probably didn't have much voice and choice within their classroom. So giving voice and choice increases motivation, increases engagement, and increases that sense of empowerment that kids really need, that these kids especially really need. And when they have voice and choice, they're more interested in digging deep. Kelley talked about that sustained inquiry piece, and they really want to dig deeper when they have a choice to be able to do that. So they're going to look for more challenging materials, things that will be much deeper. So that's another important element of this voice and choice piece. And then, but I also was kind of reflecting on voice and choice. And when we really got into differentiation, one of the big things I offered was having teachers build choice boards. And I just read some research as I was preparing for this presentation. This was research from 2017, and it talked about too much choice becoming debilitating for gifted kids. So I thought about those choice boards that I used to do, and I think I had way too many choices on those choice boards that maybe was debilitating for them. But that's a cool thing about project-based learning. You're working on one particular area with one particular topic. So it isn't overwhelming. It's just, let's dig deeper and offer choice through digging deeper.
Wait, can I offer? Okay, so let me give you a real world example of this. So my daughter is doing virtual learning right now. And she's in 6th grade, and in her 6th grade social studies curriculum, they're learning about the world. And so each lesson, she goes through some part of the world, and there's a million, I'm not kidding, it feels like a million facts. And then there's some sort of quiz about those million facts. And as she's going through it, I think to myself, she's not going to remember any of this. She's not going to remember any of this. And that's where that whole transfer idea comes in. Here's what I think. I was thinking in my head, how would I change this? How would I use PBL? What if, instead of that, you offered a choice of 3 different scenarios around the world that were relevant and mattered, that students could investigate, that would force them to dig in and learn about the culture in that area. So maybe, I don't mean to get political with this, but what if you looked at why the Palestinians are having trouble getting the vaccines from Israel? Just because there's a lot of news on that right now, it would be easy for them to find the information. They could learn about that, learn about the historical context of that area and the places. I think that question would lead them there. You could have them look at deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, and that would have them look into the area of, and so your question would be, what can we do to help deforestation of the Amazon rainforest? And so you could have students look into that. So you could give them those 2 choices, or you could offer a third about something else going on in the world. And that sort of project-based learning unit is going to lead to much more learning that actually matters, is remembered, and can be transferred. And so and you can guide that learning, but if you want to give them a choice, then they can do something they're interested in. And you could look at, I could think of lots of ways you could, because one of the things that her curriculum includes is differences in religion. So you could easily do that too, right? You could say, why do 3 different religions fight over Jerusalem? And then they could look at that. So you can just help them learn in a more effective and I think meaningful way through project-based learning. And that's a way you can give them a choice and voice.
So having voice and choice definitely leads to self-initiated revision and reflection and editing. And so those are the last couple, or well, the elements 6 and 7 on the elements that we're talking about. So the reflection piece, certainly helping our gifted students become more aware of their learning processes would be important for them to reflect upon. And in that reflection, the teacher can see how they need to be further challenged. But going back to that first point on helping them to be more aware of their learning processes, I was reading some research from the National Research Center on Gifted and Talented, and they did kind of a big piece on self-reflection. And on the next slide, this is kind of a good piece, I think, for teachers especially. It's maybe, again, they don't know how to reflect very well. So these, I thought, were just really excellent questions and reflection statements that might help gifted kids, especially, reflect on what they're learning, especially if they're looking at reading materials, and especially if they're going to have to be writing something or producing a product. These are great questions for them to think about, and things that teachers should be aware of to present to gifted kids to help them do a better job of reflecting. We all know how important it is to reflect, but if you don't know how to reflect well, or the questions to ask yourself, it won't be so valuable. So I thought this was a really nice slide. And then the last little piece that I'm going to be mentioning is the element called critique and revision. And again, I think gifted kids oftentimes need to develop good study habits. And one of the study habits sometimes they were lacking, in my recollection, was, oh, I did it and I'm done and I don't want to revise, it's over and done with. So again, I think it's so important for us as teachers to teach them that it is important to critique your work and then revise, make it better. And you can relate that to athletes and how coaches work with their skilled athletes to perfect those skills that they have, and they have to try again and learn something new in order to perfect those skills. Same with academically gifted. They have to revise and they have to critique themselves, and then they have to think how to make it better. So revision is certainly a valuable life skill that I think many gifted kids need.
Yeah, and it goes into that mindset theory stuff, right? That we can always do better, that we can always improve upon what we know and what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we also need to give students an opportunity to provide a public product. So one of the hallmarks of PBL is that students think their work matters. They know it matters. And so we have to give them an audience. One PBL Works has really helped Jacque and I understand how students can do this in lots of different ways. So for instance, we don't ever want like one group at a time to come to the front of the room and present and everybody's watching them. We have much better ways than that. So you can have multiple groups. So every group has like their place, their station, and one person is presenting at a time, but everybody in the group has to present the whole thing. And so that is an awesome way to make sure that all of the kids know all of the material. They're all responsible for all of it. So you rotate around and your audience rotates around. You can have school board members come in, parent, whoever you want, authentic audience to come in to view their products. And we try to get them not to always just do PowerPoint presentations or slideshows. We want them to really think about what they could make or do that could show their learning. So maybe with the water fountain thing, the kids are making like graphs and charts to show the audience as they walk around. But we really encourage teachers to have every one of those group members present the entire presentation, and to do this kind of round robin thing where students are moving around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so valuable, again, to help teachers, help the community see what they're doing. It is so important that we don't just keep things within the classroom, that the classroom is brought to the outside world. So gosh, people can really appreciate what goes on in those classrooms and what kids are learning. We happen to do a lot of teacher training, and we put our teachers through a project-based learning unit themselves. And this is one of the most valuable things that the teachers see at the end, because oftentimes we bring in their superintendent to listen to what they produced, or some of their school board members, some other outside community members, and teachers then really see the value of making the product public in a PBL unit.
Yeah, and you know what else this does for you? It's maybe the best part, because one of the things that we just don't have in education is time. This keeps kids on track, because you say, you know what? The American Red Cross representatives, they're coming on March 10th. So we're going to be finished. No matter what, they're going to be here to see your product. So each day when they're checking in, each period when they're checking in with you, you're checking in, you're seeing where they are, and you're telling them they're coming. And so it really does keep it. I mean, it's a pretty powerful motivator. The different school districts and teachers that Jacque and I work with, we've seen it's actually one of the best pieces just to keep everybody going, because this audience is coming. And you can get, professors, you can get local. What the American Red Cross, what was the problem?
It was on, gosh, I can hardly remember.
They were doing
It
drops.
it was getting supplies to like places who had a disaster of some kind. It was around the time that the very terrible hurricanes were happening in Texas. And so they were trying to figure out how to get supplies to these people who were kind of stranded. So the Red Cross came in.
So you can see where that was really, it was relevant at that time and authentic at that time, but now we might do something a little bit different with the Red Cross. So we always want, you can take a unit that exists and modify it, but you always want to think about, like, what are these students hearing and caring and learning about right now, that I can use those standards that are in the middle of that circle and really pull those out in a meaningful way. So we really think this is the magic of PBL. I really believe that, so one of the things that I think is really important, actually, Renzulli's model of gifted education and gifted behaviors says that creativity matters as much as intelligence. And creativity is something that I feel like we don't put enough emphasis on in classrooms and in education. PBL allows for creative thought. PBL allows for creative behaviors and creative growth in creativity. So I think not only does it allow for, students to dig deeper and to really care about their product and care about their learning and be able to transfer their learning in powerful ways, it also really allows them to grow in creativity. It allows them to grow in leadership, because you'll see, you don't appoint a leader of the group, but you'll see in different subject areas, different leaders emerge. Jacque and I have been really lucky. We've been working on a grant to help a whole school district do project-based learning in their entire school district, a public school district in Michigan. And we have seen that it works. I feel like the proof is in the pudding, and we really believe that it works. So here's what I've seen. So one of the things about creativity that we know is that you can have these creative micro moments that appear in classrooms. And so there are these bursts of creativity that students have, and it encourages other creative behaviors in other students. I have seen so many creative micro moments in these classrooms with these students, bursts of creativity, students that think of a new connection and a new way. Okay, so we were in a 9th grade algebra classroom where the students were learning about variables. And the big overarching question was, how long should a yellow light be? And so the students investigated. Their choice was they got to choose one of the 3 intersections that had the most wrecks in their town. And then they investigated the yellow light. How long was it? How many wrecks are there? They had to use variables to figure out how long the light should be. Oh my goodness, the most amazing presentations. Jacque and I got to see them present, and students that one of the teachers was like, no way. Like, this kid can't even read. He's in high school and he can't read. And he's like telling you all about variables. And one of the kids is like, that's why they have those speed bumps in the road. I mean, like, these connections are happening, and it's just a powerful way to learn and to allow for these differentiation, honestly, because the student that can't read, he's reading because he cares about reading. So one of the other magical things about PBL is literacy is in every step of it. Literacy is the foundation upon which PBL is built. So for instance, if students are looking for information about something, it self-differentiates what level they go to find that information, right? It makes sense. So they're constantly looking for information, and guess what? They're looking for it because they care, because they want to know the answer. So their group's depending on them, and so there's all kinds of strategies that Jacque and I have to help students with the literacy part of project-based learning.
Yeah, and as Kelley was talking, I thought about one other important thing that we've seen also, or that we really encourage teachers to do, because we don't have so much gifted going on in Michigan. And we believe that project-based learning is a wonderful way to serve our gifted kids in a regular classroom setting. We strongly believe and help teachers to understand about grouping kids when they're in a PBL situation. We put those gifted kids together. We don't put one here, one here, one here. So we're having them work together to bring out their real strengths on what they can do together as gifted kids.
Yeah, and when I look back at what, I told you we struggled with identification in Texas, gifted, no matter what, no matter how you were identifying students, very, very seldom were you accounting for their different domain giftedness, right? So we know from gifted research, we know that students are rarely gifted in every subject. Usually it's domain specific, right? So you can think about these awesome, amazing mathematicians and these amazing writers. Amanda Gorman, right? Poetry extraordinaire, clearly super wicked gifted. But that doesn't mean she was any more ahead than anybody else in math, right? Even though she's probably one of the most gifted linguists there ever lived. So you don't, so PBL allows for, I think it's better than regular identification at finding and helping develop domain-specific gifts. I think students can work at the level and with the gifted area that they have, and can really shine and be extraordinary in those areas that they are gifted in, while still differentiating for those areas that they're not so gifted in. So I know that we've kind of given you an overview of this and the things that there are parts of it. We tried to give you some examples, but one thing that I would suggest if you're interested in PBL is that you go to pblworks.com, and we'll look at it with you in just a minute. And we can help you see how to find a unit and to start exploring what might work in your classroom or your school. But
we'd like you to do a little activity. We were going to do this in breakout groups, but we're going to keep you all in one group instead. And this little activity is called Rose, Bud, and Thorn. So we want you to think about what we've talked about with project-based learning and gifted. And what is a rose that you heard, some highlight or some success, or maybe you're thinking about a small win that you've seen in a classroom or that you've done yourself, something positive that you see about using project-based learning with gifted. And then a bud, some kind of new idea that has blossomed or something you're looking forward to learning more about after hopefully you've heard this presentation. And then a thorn, try to think about some challenges or things you might see that might inhibit using project-based learning with gifted in classrooms here in Michigan. So we have set up a Jamboard, and Kelley's going to drop that in the chat. And we'd like you to go to that Jamboard, and we're going to put ourselves on mute so that you have a discussion amongst yourselves in these areas, thinking about the highlights, successes, what you like, efforts that have blossomed, some possibilities that you want to learn about, and those challenges, things that you think could be stressful, what might impede efforts in this area. And maybe you want to even think about some solutions that you could offer to those areas that are challenges or stresses within PBL and gifted. So,
So the Jamboard looks like this. And so we put the rose, the bud, and the thorn up here, and then a reminder of the things you're supposed to write. I don't know if y'all have used Jamboards, but they're lovely and super easy. And you can just grab a Post-it and add, you know, whatever you're going to add. If I'm going to work on the rose, then I may turn it pink and then write some sort of highlight or a small win or something I see that might work with PBL and gifted. And then you click save and it goes down, and you can stick it, you can write another one, or you can stick it under this column, right? And you can also use a text box if you prefer that. So Jamboards are really great and interactive. And so I hope that you have seen them and used them, because when we were going to put you in groups, we were going to have, you can have a different Jamboard for each group, and then the groups come back to discuss. I love Google. I love Google tools, and this is Google's great solution to student interaction virtually. So let me delete that. So I'm going to drop the link to this Jamboard. It's also in our PowerPoint presentation or Google Slides. But we're going to go on mute, and if you guys could think through adding talking points to those, and then we'll come back together and discuss. Kelley S., do you want to share your screen and share that Jamboard?
Sure, I can do that. And then I won't be turning my head to look at my other screen. That'll be good. Are you seeing the Jamboard?
We were seeing it. Now we're seeing something else. Here's YouTube.
Okay, well then let's stop that and try it again. I moved it so I didn't have to turn my head, and I think that's what messed me up. Let's try it again. Now you see it? Okay. So I'll leave this up, and that way as you guys are adding yours in, then we'll be able to see them. If someone doesn't have access to, say they're on the phone and they can't do this, I can, actually I could have Jan. If you could check the chat and just add theirs if someone doesn't have access to this. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my screen. got a couple more minutes. I feel like I should have music playing or something. I got Jeopardy music in my head.
Have you all used Jamboards?
Kurt's nodding. I love it.
Yeah.
And such a great tool too for the classroom if you've got online groups working on things. Just something different than looking at Google Docs or whatever.
Do you want to do this or have them share?
Let's have them share.
So I really loved your slide on reflecting. I think pretty much myself included, every adult I know needs that as well. Nobody takes time to sit and reflect. We're busy, busy, busy. And that was a great leading slide to use for any student, any even adult.
I was so happy to find that. So I thought it was excellent too.
And it is great in any like workplace too. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at these. What I can't tell what people's name is. What is T Fort Meyer? What? Yeah, hi. So what did you add a post? Do you have a thought about a rose, a bud, or a thorn?
I added the yellow ones. So for the rose, any of the PBL projects that I've done, students are highly engaged and really excited and don't want to stop to move on to something else. Do you want me to keep sharing?
No, that's true, you're right.
Okay.
I think I know which one Kurt already wrote. As soon as it went up, I was like, oh, that's his. Kurt, was yours about the grouping, the students? Oh, you're muted.
Under the rose?
Yeah. Oh, no, yours was under, was it?
Oh, I wrote one in each.
Oh, okay. Let's share with us.
Yeah, for my rose, it was the self-choice or the self-direction that kids the gifted kids, it seems like they need that, they crave it instead of necessarily being told. And I like the idea of the structure, but they get choice. And then I think Kelley already said it, but I didn't add the self-reflection time, but that stuck out to me too, because I do think our gifted kids want to just move on to the next thing that they can knock out and get an A on, and everybody's happy. Mommy's happy, they're happy. So, and then what was the next one? A bud, right?
Right, the bud.
Did you want me to do mine? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, what did you think about that?
Yeah, we Terry's mine, who just talked, and I'm really proud to have her on our staff. For 2 years now, T Fort Meyer. So, and we've kind of used Terry's classroom as a pilot to group some gifted kids. Obviously, COVID happening didn't really help our little pilot project, but I can just see if we continue to do that in classrooms, it's going to be easier for our gifted kids to get challenged in this way while still addressing the needs of some of the other kids. So I don't know, maybe I stuck that on there as a proud sticky note, and then, my last one, the thorn, I hate doing negative ones, but I see, like anything else with gifted and talented, it freaks out some staff. And it provides anxiety unneededly, but it provides anxiety and envy in my mind as a superintendent. I think I have staff, and I might be embarrassing Terry, but I don't care. I think I have staff that are envious of Terry and some of the things that she does because she has those skill sets to challenge kids. I love it. And so I don't know, I see that as, possibly being an issue in buildings. You guys summed it up real early in this meeting. The state of Michigan is dropping the ball. We're screwing up really bad to not even have a system to identify unless you choose to do so as a district. We choose to do so. Are we great at it? No, but at least we've got something in place. And so that's what I put that. And I know that's teacher focused, and I don't mean it to be teacher bashing, but I live it and it happens. So.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really good point. We hope, Jacque and I hope that as we come into districts that we help with that, because we feel like we know that happens. We were teachers.
Terry, where did you get your training in project-based learning?
Just trial and error, a lot of reading. And when I first started, when I first introduced myself, my master's is in gifted and talented reading. And so I started reading that way back in 2003 and did my thesis on that. And then through the years, I've tried it here and there in reading, and then now in math. Before we did we started doing the COGAT test just last summer, or the summer before. I just learned it last summer. And so now we have a way to identify that in our MAP test. And so I just started looking for things for projects. And I know Margot, I emailed her after an OAISD training I went to because I lost her link. And so I had used one or two of hers through the last 3 years.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that PBL has the power to do, and it's particularly salient in y'all's district or other districts that are doing grouping for gifted students, it has the power to bring the whole group up. I think that other students become motivated. I still believe that what's best for gifted students is best for all students. And so I think this type of learning and authentically engaging in material is wonderful. And because it self-differentiates, that really helps. I do think, who wrote the classroom management sticky up here? Was that you, Stacey? Oh, you did, Terry. Yeah, no, I think that's one of the tricky, I agree with you. It is, you have to, it takes a special kind of magic and skill, right? As a teacher to be able to, manage this group work. And one of the things that Jacque and I do is we try to train administrators. We know that one of the problems is administrators aren't always used to this type of learning in classrooms. It's not quiet. It's not sitting in rows. It's active. It's active learning. So it looks different and it feels different. And so you have to your management strategies maybe have to be adapted or
and understood by all.
Yeah. So does anybody else want to share their thoughts on this, on any of these? Rose, Thorn?
I think one of my thorns has always been, and I need to step out and be more brave about it, but getting away from our set curriculum that covers these standards in this unit and being free to get away from that. So that's my thorn.
Yeah. So, okay. So here's what we know from research about PBL. I should have led the game with this. So we know it works. We know that, so the bottom line is it doesn't matter what state you're in, test scores matter. Standardized test scores matter. And we know that PBL yields better test score results. And there has been some research around, why and how that happens. And basically the bottom line is, even if, so go back to that whole 6th grade social studies story, even though they're supposed to learn about, let's say, 15 different countries, right? Maybe they actually only basically cover 10 of them, but they deeply learn 5 of them, or maybe they only deeply learn 3 of them. That knowledge can be transferred, right? The things you learned about different religions and different people and different cultures, that can be transferred. So they can use it and actually apply it in meaningful ways. And they're thinking so critically about the material that they do better on standardized tests. So that's what the research shows us. So we kind of, when you teachers, I get it. I was like this too. It's scary not to cover everything with the same depth, but we know that it works. So it's okay. And it is a little scary. I get that. That's a good point. So we want to share with you really quick. Let me share my screen again. This will stop. Yes. Okay. I want to share something because we're almost out of time and I don't want to forget to do this. So we told you PBL works, right? And when you go to PBL works, you can start a free account. You can log in. So I'm in my account. And then there are so many great projects. You can click on the project and all the information is there. Free, the whole PBL unit is blown out. Now that you know the 8 parts, it's usually broken down by the 8 parts, and it will talk about how the unit is authentic and how you can use sustained inquiry to build the unit. Second thing that's not as commonly known, GVSU partnered with PBL Works. That's how Jacque and I initially got so much of the training. We trained our pre-service teachers. So when teachers graduate with a teaching certificate from GVSU now, they have been trained in project-based learning. And so this is called out of the gate because the federal government was interested in, if we get teachers earlier and comfortable with PBL type learning, experiential learning earlier, will they do better in the long run? So that's what the federal grant paid for this work. So if you go to this website, and I'll drop it in the chat real quick. If you go to this website, this is the out of the gate website. And there were other universities also. There were, I think, 4 universities ended up partnering with PBL Works. But so now remember, as you're looking at this one, this is why I think this one's kind of cool. This is about people being trained for the very first time. These are undergraduate students that are going to become teachers. So it's really stepped out. And there's lots of detail. So you can go, if you scroll down, so that website link that I dropped, if you scroll down, there are all these projects linked here, okay? So if you click, and it will tell you, like, this is mostly English, language arts, and music for elementary students, or, you know, maybe you want to look at one for middle school students, social studies. And so it will tell you kind of the age level and subject area emphasis, although they all have literacy. And so if you click on one of them, so I have, there's a high school that did this one. It is gigantic. There's so much here. There's an overview first, and then if you click on the project, it opens up a PBL of everything with links, with the rubrics already built, with every single thing here. It is almost overwhelming. Look at all these resources, videos to start the unit with, a link to every single thing that you might need. So the federal grant paid for this, and it exists. I know a teacher that did this unit, this particular one. She said it was wonderful. So everything is here, how to check in. So in PBL, we have milestones. So they're kind of like check-ins, right? Formative assessment, where you're checking in to make sure students are learning that material. It tells you how to do your milestones, how to check in with students as the unit goes along to make sure they're learning the material. And one other thing, in PBL, we do have formative assessment is a huge piece of it. It doesn't mean you never give quizzes. You might give one of your milestones could be a 10-question quiz. It might be an exit ticket with 4 questions on it. You're still doing that stuff. It's just part of this larger unit where the students are learning, we call it direct instruction. They're learning that stuff because they need to know it to solve the problem. Right? So like if you go to that 9th grade yellow light scenario I told you about, they had to teach them direct instruction. They had to stand up in front of the room and teach them about variables, how to use them, what they're used for. The students had to know that because they had to know it to solve the problem, right? They cared. So you're still doing direct instruction and quizzes, but you're doing them in a way that they go through this unit, because remember, it's not a dessert, you're teaching through the unit. So these are huge and giant. Jacque and I are here to help if you want to start, or if Terry has some next steps questions, or any of you that already are doing PBL. I really believe that PBL and gifted go hand in hand. I think PBL is the way to go for everybody. I think it teaches students in a way that's meaningful, that allows for transfer and genuine, authentic learning.
Yeah, I echo that.
So we
Kelley, does, oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, nope.
Does, and maybe this isn't, I don't know, do these lessons or these projects, do they cross with the standards of the standards that potentially would be impacted in a given project, so that if you needed to, you could say, here's the project we're doing, and here's all the different standards from all the different core areas that are being hit by that. Is that in there? Oh,
they use common core standards.
Excellent.
So they're all listed, and you can, if you click on, so I blew out the project, but if you click on, you can open it in a Google Doc and it will give those. So yes, they are across, they do have the standards. So that's kind of goes to what Terry was saying earlier though. Like you may open it up and be like, what, I'm going to spend a week and a half on this and it teaches 3 standards. But here's the thing. We know that those students leave that project and they know those standards. Not only do they know those standards, they've grown their reading ability, they've grown their writing ability, they've grown their thinking ability, their creativity, because they cared about the product at the end, right? They've grown their leadership skills. So I just think that there's evidence that what we have seen to be true is true. Okay, so I just left the thing. It was about questions. What I'll drop our email addresses here in case you need us or have questions, but can you ask us questions that you have right now?
I guess I'm a firm believer in sometimes you just got to start wherever, and you just have to do it and work with those that want to work with you. And for those that don't, you just keep marching forward. And so my question is, does it make sense to you guys? Again, using Terry's classroom, she's got about four kids in her classroom that definitely would definitely, no matter how we qualify kids or whatever, are going to be gifted and talented. And does it make sense to use this to get this concept rolling with just those kids? Well then, and I know this is extra work for the teacher kind of, but the rest of the class doesn't have to necessarily be doing project-based learning, right? I mean,
so we wouldn't agree with that. We would have you do this unit with all of the kids, but we would have you group those gifted kids together, not spread them out, not sprinkle them out, but group them together. That group is going to yield a different product. And that's another reason why you don't want the groups to come to the front of the room and everybody to see everybody's products, because theirs is going to look better at the end. But your audience, right, your school board members, your whoever is walking around and they're hearing and they're seeing these amazing things. And like I said earlier, it will bring the rest of the class up it will grow them, because they will learn from the example. And here's one more thing. So this is an important PBL thing. Terry probably already knows this if she's done it before. The first time you do it, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be so fabulous because it's really is. And maybe it's the classroom management piece of it that makes it like it's a process. You get better and better at it. So you will learn that, what that group needs and what they don't need, but they're going to be doing the project at a different level.
I got that. I guess my follow-up question that I would want help with a good answer for, because if I use what you just said, how do I respond to the follow-up question of, well, you do different things with gifted and talented kids all over the building. Why don't you treat them different in this respect? that would be a tough one for me to answer because I think we do treat gifted and talented kids different.
Oh, okay. So I think that you would explain the high ceiling thing. I think you would explain that this allows, that project-based learning allows for a high ceiling. And so because of that, it's an ill-formed question to begin with, and you're growing skills like leadership, creativity, in addition to the domains. So, and honestly, Kurt, to be really frank, if you get any of them to come in and watch, they'll see, you know, if the proof is in the pudding with PBL, when you come in and you see students presenting, you notice that the one group is way more advanced, way more in depth. There is a difference in the product, I believe. I think that's where you can really, I think you can identify gifted learners with PBL because you can see where they went.
My question was a bit rhetorical. I'm guessing you read into that. But as a superintendent, you get ill-informed questions all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Kurt,
One,
I'll add to that too.
if I can,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say one project I do that could be differentiated for different levels in the classroom is my gifted and talented. When we're doing place value, they design $1 million house, whereas the other ones could stop at $100,000 or $500,000 house.
Right. And I was in a geometry classroom that had gifted kids groups like y'all do. And the kids did it themselves though. The teacher did not do it. The non-gifted kids ended up using, it was geometry, and they were building a floor plan. And the kids ended up all building rectangular floor plans, and the gifted group built like an octagon. You know, I mean, it was like they did it themselves. They built their floor plan ended up having 8 sides instead of a rectangle. So I do think it just self-differentiates. They enjoy, you know, a challenge.
I was going to say, Kurt, to your question, I would present that to your teachers because I can totally see this question coming to you, what you could mention. I would just say that this is like kind of elaborating on what Kelley said but simplifying it, this type of learning and teaching hits all levels. So we don't have to do the different things with the gifted students because that can be seen as a negative that you are doing different things. And maybe that's depending how they're asking, right? If that is said in a way that of not happy you're doing gifted things differently, maybe it's saying, hey, so we don't have to do different things, we're all doing this project at different levels.
Well, and when you do the small group, the direct instruction, a lot of that is done in groups, and so the things Terry does with the gifted group are different.
Right.
The lessons she's having with them are different. When she's teaching area and she's doing that geometry lesson, it's a different lesson with the kids that have an octagon, you know what I mean? Or the kids that have the $1 million house, like it's a different lesson. So they are also getting different lessons, but the overall unit is the same. So here's the thing, the other parents are all happy because their kids are getting this opportunity to show advanced learning and growth too.
I think the biggest challenge you're going to have, Kurt, is to somehow ensure that it's not a mixed ability model. It has to be the gifted kids pulled out for this to work, for them to be able to take it to a higher level than everyone else. And I know traditionally it's been taught mixed ability grouping. Well, that's great if you got bright kids, but for the gifted kids, they need to have their own group for them to be able to soar. And I think that's going to be your hardest sell, actually.
We're getting there.
A stumbling point for many teachers. They just want to spread those kids out and have them be like the tutor or the helper, and they can't be. They've got to be the learners as well. And the way to do that is group them together, of course.
And really the root of that comes from the EA's contracts. Treat us all the same.
Yeah.
Well, y'all aren't all the same.
Right.
And different subjects are different. And so let's get over ourselves and do what's best for the kids. And because that's really the root of it. That's why all the classrooms had to have the same number of special ed kids in them. All of them had to have the same number of these. And it's because all the staff had to be treated equal, and that's not real world, right? So
Right, equal is not equitable, right?
Right. And Jacque, I always remember when you were at Rockford and you had all those wonderful projects and hands-on project-based learning at Rockford, that you came up with a lot of it yourself too. Anyway, I do remember your point system is different for the gifted kids.
Yeah.
And that's very important. Like for creativity, I always remember you had creativity, and task commitment. That's very important. And you had a different set of points for rubrics for that. And I think that's so important.
That's a good point, Jan.
Yeah.
Terry could do that. She could look at creativity for that group.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And task commitment and completion, very important for gifted kids. I mean, you have to have those point values there if they're going to reach it. I mean, they know what you're going to grade on.
Yep. We're now suddenly real believers in single point rubrics.
Yeah.
And but we always have that end of the rubric that here's how you can go, where you can go above and beyond. Not that we even spell it out, but they have to think about, oh, okay, here's the standard. Now, here's what, you know, what can we think about to go above and beyond in this particular area? And then as we're instructing them in small groups, we can encourage that. How do we help them to go above and beyond?
Yes, that's very important.
I've got to jump into another meeting, but I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate everything you guys do, and I don't mean this to be cheesy, but I get inspired again every time I get with this group, even if it's a smaller group like this one today. So, but keep up the good work.
We appreciate what you're doing too, Kurt.
We're trying. We're not where we want to be yet. We're trying.
So Kurt, for future, like if you want to pass on this link, I put in I just made when we were talking a YouTube playlist, and I put it in the recordings in the chat if you want to copy that, so that if you wanted your other teachers to listen to any of these, I'm going to add this one to that.
I just happen to be the chair for the Superintendent's Association in Muskegon County for the last couple of years. And I always push out your info on this meeting and others. And so I'll put that, not just, you know, Terry and I'll pass along to staff, but also I always do it to the superintendents. And one of these days, hopefully it'll start to click a little better.
You're going to be our model.
And actually, Jan is a huge pusher of that in Muskegon County. I'm sure you guys know that.
Thank goodness, Jan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Alex, do you have questions or do you have any thoughts? Alex? Okay.
I was checking chat because that was the communication way before, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway. Oh,
I'll keep a lookout. Oh, there it is.
Yes.
Mhm.
So oh my gosh, like younger students love it. I also like it for high school because they get to learn again. Like we know students love learning, but if you go to those PBL works, or PBL, the out of the gate one, there are lots of cool units. You can Google it too.
Yeah.
You can Google. So if you know that your student is learning, your first grader is learning about shapes and 3D shapes, if you Google 3D shapes and project-based learning, you'll see a great idea. I've seen some cool ones with playgrounds and stuff.
There's an excellent video on PBL Works of a kindergarten class doing one on tiny houses. So they had to design a tiny house for a math kind of project, and it's just wonderful. So that would spur a lot of good ideas for younger students.
Yeah, and those are all on YouTube.
I just want to
through,
sheet
PBL Works. Yeah, no, I get it, Alex. Thanks for coming and for listening. So anyway, we're here if you, wherever you're at, if you need help, just reach out to us. We have learned a lot about project-based learning, and we really do believe that it's the best for gifted education. I think it's best for gifted education for a whole host of reasons. And I think you can, like I said, even identify giftedness in it, an advanced creativity ability. So
Definitely.
thanks.
Oh, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Mhm.
I have one more. Can you give us a little summary about what you're going to be doing at the April 22nd conference?
Yes, that's where I was going with that too. Well, talking about your book.
Yeah, so
and
we're going to
stuff,
talk about gifted and maybe a little bit broader sense. We're still going to talk a little bit about PBL and just different curriculums that work. We're going to do it through the lens of the Queen's Gambit idea, and you know, also Amanda Gorman, like these gifted, these young adult gifted students that we've seen lately kind of emerge, and to think about how fictional or not, and to think about how those students could be, those gifts could be fostered in public education or in private education, how they could be fostered in a gifted classroom.
So we're looking forward to that, and we don't know if people would be able to get our book. It's through Proofrock Press. You know, if the organization can provide that, that would be wonderful. But maybe you want to even publish it beforehand if you can't. So it's only $19.99.
Yeah, we
that.
kept it short on purpose. Actually, we have a huge online resource because we didn't want the price to go over $20. So we produced all this stuff and put it online so it didn't cost to print.
Yeah, so they could even print content if they needed.
Well, we were looking at, trying to either build that into the price or offer that as an early bird registration for a certain amount of them or something like that. So we're talking about ideas with that. So we got to check that with the superintendent and see what we can do. But we'd like to have that as part of it.
Yeah, it'd be good if they had
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's an easy one for them to bring back to their own districts and then do a book study or something,
Yeah.
so more people will learn. So
Yeah.
And Jackie and I can drop in at the last week of the book study. So it's a good way to train teachers and get gifted hours and understandings in at school districts. And that's what
Yeah.
Jackie and I will do is you just schedule with us and we can drop in and Zoom the last meeting and talk to them about the book, the teachers that have been reading it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Terry, you had a
I was wondering,
question?
could you put the name of the book on the chat,
Yes.
please? Thank you.
Okay, Terry.
I had one last question, and it was about this type of activity in remote learning.
yeah, lately we've been doing that. We've been training teachers to teach PBL and remote learning. And so we've had many, many teachers be very successful with that. Plus, again, PBL Works has many, many articles now and suggestions on how to do this well with online learning. So it is possible, it is successful, and I think teachers need to be trained a little bit on it, but it works.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you, Jan and Kelley and Jackie. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you all. Thank you for all that you do.
Yes.
You're welcome. I don't feel like it's enough, but at least it's a start and moving in the right direction.
That's right.
Right,
Yay.
that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Bye.